everybody, I'm Sean Merrick, and I'm here today chatting with Carter Woetzel, who's the founder, the lead researcher of Feather. Over the years, he's built and, let's just say, kind of been the maestro orchestrating so many different products in this space. You couldn't even count them or list them all, but he's worked with teams the likes of Maker DAO and Fhenix. We're going to dig into his story today and the big ideas that have birthed what is Feather. Just a quick TLDR on that to catch people up and tease what we're digging into today. It's this financial product built around the big question that what if you could borrow anything from anywhere, any chain, with your crypto assets and put them to work? And so I know Carter's going to break all that down for us, as well as what makes Feather very unique in this space of borrow and lend, and why at the moment there seems to be this impressive wave of capital migrating to products like this. So that's where we're headed today. It's pretty cool. Even in the last year, some of the research I was doing for this conversation, you can see in real time what Carter likes to use the language. I know the internet of lending, and Feather is sitting right on the frontier there, ready to ride this wave. So it's a pretty cool moment. And Carter, welcome. Would you walk us through your story that leads into this idea of Feather? What's the prequel to the launch of everything that we're about to see?
Well, first off, that was such a lovely intro. Let's just end the podcast now. So it was such a powerful opening statement. The story of Feather is really built on the last 3.5 years of building. The core team and the set of people behind Feather have been in DeFi for over 4 years. We built the world's first encrypted money market, the world's first encrypted stablecoin tracking a basket of currencies and commodities, a decentralized exchange, a liquid staking token. We have built so many different DeFi primitives and become familiar with risk management. And within that journey, I think there was a couple of really core hard lessons we learned. One of them is that location really matters. At the heart of what we do, we want to serve consumers. We want to connect millions of people to a world where you don't have to go to a bank. We believe in a permissionless frontier, a world of freedom with your capital, a world where you don't have to worry about governance or red tape standing in the way of you putting your hard work to work however you'd like. And so those principles are what led us to build private DeFi, but as time has gone on, we've realized our values have remained the same, but we want to be able to go and serve millions of users in something like Ethereum, something like Base, something like Arbitrum. We see such a strong need for simplified lending and borrowing. And we also see the need for helping everyday folks access all of these opportunities in ways that are safe and can give them yields that can change their everyday life, truly. So yeah, I think I'll pause there and say that's what led us here, is that our principles have remained the same, but our desire to go where the people are and serve the people, that has been the driving force behind Feather and our entrance into the EVM ecosystem.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, what was kind of popping in my mind there as you share on that, I bumped into the other day a savings account in a bank that was the highest yield I'd ever seen. And it wasn't a CD or anything, but this account, if you set it up, it allowed you to earn 5%, which is mind-blowing from a bank. But yet the kind of yield and APR, and we can phrase it like that, but what it really is help for people in everyday life. That yield is what allows people to survive. I mean, at its core, I hear you describing access for everyday people to products like this that make financial life a little more survivable, even for people that may not be DeFi native or have an NFT PFP or even know what that is. I know Feather is what you hope will be an entry point, an accessible and non-crypto native friendly product for people to use in that way. Anything you'd add to that, or is that kind of true to the heartbeat?
That's true to the heartbeat. And I'll say that to describe Feather, Feather is a lending and borrowing platform. It is going to be on many blockchains, giving users access to thousands of assets. We allow people to lock up their crypto collateral and borrow against their crypto collateral. And we're importantly built on top of Morpho, which is long-standing infrastructure that continues to mature. Their smart contracts have, I think, 9+ audits at this point. It's one of the most condensed, smallest code bases in existence for lending and borrowing, which is very intentional. And from our perspective, it's actually really cool to be in a situation where we aren't building the smart contracts. I think more and more crypto is splitting into specialization. And so the security piece, we have so much peace of mind about the underlying plumbing, and that allows us to instead be extremely focused on distribution and creating structured financial products on top of this layer of just incredibly strong and trusted smart contracts. Morpho has over 10 billion in TVL. I like to say that it's going to be the first trillion in TVL protocol. I think it's probably worth talking about some of the properties of Morpho that really has brought the Feather team. Because you might say, oh, why don't you just go build your own thing? And it's like, there's some really distinct reasons why I think that era is maybe coming to a close, and maybe we can talk about that in a moment. It's so beautiful just to be focused on a specific portion of the stack instead of owning the full stack. And I think our experience of building all of those products end to end has kind of informed this next era.
Yeah, I'm realizing before we even go too much further, could you give us like a user story here? Let's say that somebody has never even dipped their toes in crypto before, but they've got 8,000 US dollars that they want and need to earn on due to the nature of the world today and inflation and all of the things we know. They need to put that to work. What does Feather have for somebody like that? What's kind of like a raw base use case for someone in that situation, you think?
So we're going to be adding in fiat on-ramps. It's actually one of the highest priorities. So I'm going to assume that fiat on-ramps are part of the story. But it's our dream that anyone will be able to connect a bank account. Unfortunately, there's a mass migration from capital and banks to capital on blockchains, and this is kind of a necessary evil as people go from less freedom to more freedom, arguably less risk to more risk in some ways, but also more risk to less risk in other ways. But you would connect your bank account to a fiat on-ramp, purchase USDC with your dollars in one transaction, and then be able to deposit your USDC into, there's basically dozens of options for you. You can deposit into a vault managed by Gauntlet, a vault managed by Feather. There's all these basically structured financial products that people have entire risk engines behind to make your life as a user very simple. You deposit and you withdraw and you earn yield. That's it. That's the story. You don't need to be out there interacting with 40 plus lending and borrowing market pairs. You don't need to be thinking about liquidity management. You don't need to be worried about liquidity shocks or oracle risk or price volatility. All of that is handled by, it's known as the curation layer. So you have the smart contract layer, and you have the curation layer, and then you have the interface layer, which is like the website by which you can interact with those two layers. So basically, dollars to USDC, USDC to a yield opportunity, and those yield opportunities right now are like anywhere from 8% all the way up to 15% from what I've seen. And if we do our job well, this user experience and the portfolio experience and the yield experience should feel incredibly simple. And one of the things that we also have on our roadmap, besides fiat on-ramps, will also be debit card issuance. It's becoming easier and easier for debit cards to interact with DeFi. It's just becoming a standard. Like if you're a DeFi platform, like Osmosis has it, Moonwell is another really nice Feather adjacent product that also has debit cards. And so in the ideal world, you're depositing $8,000, you're earning 10% yield, and you have a debit card tied to that lending position where you can go and spend your yield, or you can even take out loans. No paperwork, no credit rating. You can take out a loan against your collateral tied to your debit card. And that's kind of the late game dream. And you'll notice that there is shout outs to previous dreams that I've talked about in the last 3.5 years, but it's much easier to achieve now than before for two reasons. One, the tech has matured. So fiat on-ramps, debit cards, there is now an abundance and a lot of competition around these folks looking for integrations. And then the second thing is wallet support. We will be supporting over 500 crypto wallets on day one, and we'll also be supporting a mobile experience from day one. So it's easier to build beautiful and simple apps in 2025, especially on Ethereum, than what it was a couple years ago.
I mean, you're as much of a DeFi crypto OG as anybody could ever claim to be. Certainly, like, working in the space and your level of insight into just how the landscape looks. I think one thing that whether people who are listening to this are like full-time living on crypto Twitter, very familiar with it, or they're sitting outside the space, one thing that everybody knows about even the last couple of years in DeFi is the meme coin casino, and how we just saw really a transfer of wealth from desperate people basically doing the equivalent of scratch lottery tickets to protocols who were launching meme coins at $1 million a minute and willing to take their money. I'm wondering now, what are you seeing as sort of the emergent properties of the DeFi landscape now that maybe in some ways are a reaction to or a maturation out of that? I saw recently some research from a firm called Kiln. They shared a report in July that curated vaults, so you're talking about these vault opportunities that are curated strategies by major players where you just put the money in and they're doing their thing, and it's, the word safe is always has like footnotes and things, but it's safe. It's not that meme coin casino. And so these curated vaults have experienced a significant increase in total value locked, growing from under 150 million in June 2024 to over 4.4 billion at the time they released this report. So it was a 28x increase in capital deployed to vaults like this in 1 year. And then they noted this surge indicates a strong institutional appetite for on-chain income products as users seek more efficient ways to manage their capital. So I'm curious if you have a hypothesis around this massive migration of capital into products like what Feather is launching, and maybe any thoughts you have on that trend as part of the larger DeFi landscape.
The meme coin casino extracts a lot of value and can make a very small number of people very wealthy very quickly. But I view it as a candle that burns and is slowly kind of runs out until someone invents the next candle that gets played. And I think I break crypto more and more into what I call slow finance and fast finance. And slow finance is really how you sustainably change lives and sustainably empower people. You give them tools that, if patiently used and with good financial principles, can compound your wealth in a way that's really powerful. Fast finance is the much quicker, twitchier, your perps, your meme coins, your dexes, all of which are an important part of financial expression. But I think the general crypto demographic are kind of forking off into these two camps pretty distinctly. And I think there's a lot of fatigue around fast finance. And so we see a consolidation of people, and I think like the Bitcoin cycle and market cap dominance is maybe a good representation of this. I think the growth of stablecoins is a great representation of this. People want to hold great quality assets, earn safe, solid yield. And what's cool about kind of the split into slow finance and fast finance is the slow finance people are actually servicing the fast finance people, right? There's these people who come in, I want to borrow a huge amount of this to go do something over here in degen land, such that like if I lose, well, it was like a loan that I took out, my collateral is still safe. So the two worlds of slow finance and fast finance definitely still need each other, and the yield in the world of slow finance does partially come from the world of fast finance. So in summary, the fatigue is real. I think there is a flight to quality assets, and even like experienced DeFi people not wanting to spend yet another day on X chasing some new product launch to earn some hypothetical points to then maybe get redeemed at some point. It's just kind of like this endless wheel of new protocols trying to latch onto your attention, and it's just not worth it. And curators are the people that are willing to straddle both worlds of, hey, we're going to have 90% of the strategy be super safe lending blue chip things, and maybe the other 10%, there's a bunch of risk analysis done to give some exposure to slightly riskier assets, but in a very like calculated way, and also in a way where if things shift, you can predictably pull away from certain lending opportunities. So that's why things like Feather are awesome, is we basically, all the fatigue of crypto can just disappear if you just use a vault and interact with lending. Like more and more in my DeFi activity is basically 90% of my time is in lending, and the other 10% you have fun with perps. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with having fun with the world of leverage, but I think most people are starting to, most of my time is in slow finance, and I can have some fun with fast finance too.
That makes a lot of sense. How about this phrase? I tried to find its origin point for the Internet of Lending, and I think we'll just give you the trademark on it, honestly.
It doesn't exist yet, as far as
I wasn't really getting any big hits. Could you walk us through, I guess, the story as it exists in your mind for that phrase? I think there's probably some vivid paintings that live in your head when you think about that phrase. So talk us through what you see, what you imagine there, as big as you want to go with that story of the Internet of Lending.
Fundamentally, up until Bitcoin and the advent of smart contracts, finance was always done on centralized, separate ledgers. There's been red tape such that only a certain set of people can do these things. And I think this world of crypto has really ripped the Band-Aid off on innovation and free market participation. And what I envision is over the course of the next 10 years, which honestly, it's all happening in real time, stocks are going to come on chain, debt is going to come on chain, more and more payments in commerce, things like Venmo and PayPal are going to come on chain. And it's really this beautiful thing because the whole world can lend and borrow with each other. That is what the Internet of Lending is. There are no stiff arms. All are welcome, and you're not judged by your career or your income. You're just a crypto wallet address, and you have assets. And if those assets are good assets, you can do things with them. And the Internet of Lending, I think, also acknowledges that there is going to be an infinite number of growing new assets and new tokenized things that are in crypto. And in order to make those things accessible and useful, there's going to be thousands of applications that specialize on servicing different customers for different assets. But the thing that defines the internet of lending is within these thousands of venues and these millions of assets over time, the ability to frictionlessly move money around is truly a first in human history. And that is what a distributed ledger does. That's what blockchains fundamentally give us. It is simply better technology. It's simply frictionless. And that is why the internet of lending will eventually just become lending, truly. But for now, we have to insert the word internet of in front of it until it becomes the norm. And make no mistake, it will become the norm.
Yeah, the internet of lending will just become lending. And I think what that phrase in front of it, the internet of, does for us is it creates this connotation of an expansive web, like a rich network that, just like explaining the internet to someone in, I don't know, 1995, it would populate something thoroughly inadequate to what the internet would become. In the same way now, our vision or imagination for the internet of lending is thoroughly inadequate to what you're saying will be realized within, say, a decade from now. But I mean, to your point, we should adjust our mental framework around money to accept the proposition that there are a multiplicity of assets with which we can conduct finance. And there are even among these assets different properties of moneyness. I like the idea of moneyness, something like Bitcoin, which is wonderful as a store of value, similar to gold, as many people would say, resisting against inflation, versus something like a USDC or another stable coin, which you can kind of park and maybe have the chance to earn yield on in a vault like you're describing here. And all of like this full gamut of moneyness across a multiplicity of assets where anyone can select a risk profile or a strategy that fits with what they need in their financial life at this point and make things work for themselves without a gatekeeper.
Yes, gatekeeper.
Without having to read 300 pages of a PDF from a bank and put their house on the line or whatever else. It's free financial expression, as I've heard you say before. Freedom of financial expression. Love that. Anything else sparking in your mind with that idea, that concept?
No, I think you nailed it. It's, freedom of financial expression. And I also think the global component of it is so powerful. Like 40 years ago, the ability of, let's say you're in, Singapore. If someone from Singapore tries to put something up as collateral and they need someone from the US to be their lender, the rails for something like that to happen are extremely expensive. You're in different legal districts, so the ability to settle across if something goes wrong with debt is so complicated. And so the world of finance was blocked on the fragility of the legal law. But crypto with smart contracts, it's so much better. Instead of a 40,000 page notebook of legalese, which does literally exist for a lot of financial markets, you have a couple hundred lines of code, literally like Morpho is like such a small amount of code. And the rules are, at least with what Feather is building on, the rules are immutable. I think it's my favorite part about Morpho is that basically the contract that manages the relationship between lenders and borrowers is immutable. The rules of the game cannot change on you. There is no admin. There is no one that can change the rules of the game. And so what undergirds the freedom of financial expression is the ability to have infrastructure that is more trusted than any other financial rails that have ever been made in human history. And blockchain sets the stage for that. And then the smart contracts on top of it are really the utility kind of summoned out of it. It is just so cool to be building products that it's always the paradox of you don't have to trust them, but obviously trust. When we say that, what we really mean is you don't have to trust that someone will meddle with it or someone will change it or someone will break it. It's like binary in nature. It's like a 1 or a 0. And if it's at the point that you fully trust it, and if those properties hold true, the promises and the guarantees of that lending platform, lending contract is stronger than in any other guarantee that exists within the traditional world of finance, of people and laws and legalese.
I mean, you're getting right to the heart of, I think, the opportunity of on-chain economies that maybe people who aren't here yet like haven't quite understood. But the word picture that really brought it home for me is that smart contracts are a bit like a vending machine that you punch in, you want A7, this bag of pretzels or whatever, it will give it to you. It won't, the machine won't break. It's not rigged to take or steal your money. The contract between your input, your participation in that smart contract, and what the output of the smart contract will be is the word you used. It's immutable. It's trustless. You don't have to trust anybody. And of course, in the very worst of crypto, what we've seen is smart contracts abused to launch malicious meme coins or take from people, these types of things. But if it could ever be argued that there's a gold standard of smart contracts, it's probably Morpho. So you mentioned them already, but could you do a little more to introduce some of the major partnerships that Feather has landed so far, kind of eye-popping partnerships with Morpho and then with Say as well?
Yes, so you also said something that invoked some thoughts in me that I'll quickly do, and then I'll circle back to Morpho partnerships and properties. I believe we're entering into a phase where trust is being consolidated around a set of basic verbs, basic primitives in crypto. Things like trading, things like lending and borrowing, things like perpetual swaps. I think we're going to see like the network effects of certain smart contracts proving that they're truly, truly, truly robust. And once that, as that trust builds and builds and builds, it's really hard to replace that. It's really hard to compete with it. It's almost like it gets the job done 95% of the way. So this is our new HTTPS in the upper left-hand corner of your web browser. It's like the basic DeFi primitive equivalent of achieving true adoption that will never go away. So that's one consolidation of trust. And I think that's happened with a lot of the breaches in trust. And I think Morpho is an example of a stack that is part of that consolidation. In terms of who Morpho, well, let's first talk about the properties in Morpho and then like who they're partnered with and why those partners chose Morpho. So current lending, I'll quickly talk about Aave. It still is the largest, but lending to date has been cross-margin, which means you can come in with multiple collaterals. You put down your Bitcoin, put down your USDC, put down your ETH, and then you can borrow multiple different types of assets against multiple different collaterals. Really cool utility. The world will continue to have cross-margin lending platforms. But there is a problem with cross-margin lending, which is that you almost have this principled agent problem, where so the three parties are really the lenders, the risk managers, and the borrowers. Every time you add in a new collateral, accepted collateral, all of the lenders now accept that asset as something they're being exposed to. So maybe you're on asset number 15 for Aave and they want to add in something else. If they add it in, all the lenders, if something goes south, they're on the hook for it. And so this is extremely problematic because Aave has a principal agent problem where they have basically like a different set of incentives from the lenders in some ways, in that they want to optimize revenue. They want more revenue, right? And so they're kind of pushed to take just a little bit more risk, a little bit more risk, a little bit more risk. And you can really only go so far before you eventually have to stand still. You can't have any more experimentation. There's so much cross-margin risk happening that you basically just have to pause and you've reached somewhat of a limit. And maybe technically there is no limit, but the speed by which you can experiment is simply too slow in relation to the thousands of assets that are coming into the game. So that's the limitation of cross margin. So Morpho came in, it took a totally different approach. They basically said, we're going to intentionally constrain the system in order to make really, really strong building blocks. And so Morpho has something called isolated lending. And what that means is when you lend, they're basically pairs of markets. So there'll be a market that's like Bitcoin as collateral where you can borrow USDC. And that's it. That's it. That is all that's in the pair. You can't add anything extra to it. There's nothing cross-margin in it. One collateral that lenders are exposed to. So what this allows for is there are hundreds and thousands of these unique isolated pairs. And this bifurcates the risk so lenders know exactly what they're being exposed to. And the cool part about this design with isolated lending is you can then build structured financial products with a lot more flexibility than something like Aave. Now you can come in, and this is what curators do, and this is the part of what Feather does, is, hey, you can deposit USDC into this vault, and then we will distribute that out 20% to this pair, 20% to this pair, and we'll construct a risk profile for you. And the most important difference between this and Aave is Aave only gives you one choice. When you come to the app, you come to the platform, you either accept the existing set of risk or you don't. You either use it or you don't. There isn't like multiple different sets of risk that you can pick from. It is one whole risk thing. Versus with Morpho, with curators, there are dozens of different risk profiles that you can pick that are then professionally managed for you. You also can just directly lend to one of those underlying markets too. You're not forced to use a curator, although the vast majority of people prefer to use curators because they're optimizing yield for you, and in many ways they are protecting your capital for you. So, in summary, isolated lending is much safer building blocks for other people to come in and build the full gambit of products. And this is why we're seeing companies like Coinbase come in and integrate with Morpho on the base blockchain, because institutions, they don't want to trust some complicated cross-margin system. They say, nope, I want my users to be able to lock up Bitcoin and borrow dollars. That is it. I don't want any other risk in the game here. I just want this. There's a quote that constraints are the birthplace of art. And so I think that's the beauty of Morpho, is it intentionally constrains itself down to the simplest building blocks. And what emerges from that is this beautiful free market of financial products built on incredibly strong, immutable, simple smart contracts.
I've never thought before about the fact that typical borrow lend protocols, which you named a couple of them, they're incentivized to increase TVL on their platform, right? So they're thinking, how can we grow? How can we get more liquidity here? And what they're inevitably doing is onboarding more liquidity into shared risk. And the picture I got in my mind was, it's like you got a landlord of an apartment building, multiple floors, multiple rooms on every floor, and the landlord wants that place to be full so he can take more rent from people. And so maybe there's someone down the hallway who's doing campfires in their living room, in their apartment. And you can smell the smoke, you can be a little worried, you're a few doors down from them, but the landlord, he wants them there. No, it's okay, don't worry about it. But it's shared risk by nature of architecture. That's what the apartment building is, versus what you're describing is isolated risk enabled by Morpho smart contracts that people can experience on Feather, is really like living in your own house. You know what you're signing up for. It's a containerized risk. So it's limited, all of the risk is limited to the specific assets that you are touching. You're not at risk by other things that you're not touching. You're not at risk by everybody else in the apartment building and whatever crazy things they might be doing down the hall.
Totally. And also because you have this curation layer, there are dozens of curators at this point. I would expect one day there'll be thousands of curators. And one of the benefits of that is there are curators doing riskier things. There are also curators that are known for being very, very safe and conservative. And so you as a user have the freedom. Do I want to go with a lower yield? Do I want to go with the higher yield? It's pretty clear that they give you, here's all the things you're exposed to, here's the track record, here's all these different things. And you basically have this buffet of, yeah, maybe I do want a little bit of this, a little bit of this. And then once again, you can still do all this stuff on your own separately. If you only want to do in one market, you're also empowered to do that. But to really get the most juice out of all of these thousands of isolated lending pairs, the curators serve a really cool function in middle layer. There's also more guarantees. So you might be like, oh, this sounds a lot like a traditional financial product. There is definitely some overlap. But there's also things, the way the permissions are designed with curators, because curators are just interacting with a smart contract. There's different roles. Like on the smart contract, there's the allocator and the guardian and the owner. And it's almost like some Supreme Court justice stuff built into this where, let's say a curator wants to add a new exposure to the financial product. The guardian can actually veto it. They can say no. And the owner of the contract can even be like, hey, guardian, I want to replace you. And the guardian can actually veto it down, which is kind of crazy. And so they basically added in roles to curation management so that the most elite curators are hiring very neutral guardians, and then this makes the lenders feel really, really good because it's like, I know that there's basically a watchdog built in to this entire financial product. So I could fall down that curation layer governance ladder, but it isn't just some like unilateral dictator that's just, oh, we got all these deposits, now we can just go chase this other crazy thing. The two inherent checks and balances are, because there's so many decisions, if you do something like that, you're going to lose all your lenders because they're just going to go to other products. And because unlike Aave, where there's only one choice, in Morpholand, there's dozens of choices. So you can't be stupid as a curator or you'll lose customers. And then the other piece too is some of those built-in checks and balances that curators embrace because they want to win customers and show them, hey, I'm willing to hire a neutral third party that can say no to us wanting to add exposure, which I think is awesome.
And I guess part of the check and balance for the performance of these vaults, for the assurance that the liquidity is being deployed to the strategy, or that what is being promised is being done, part of that is the transparent ledger that you described earlier. So this activity is visible and verifiable on chain. So that's good news as far as a security blanket for users there. So if somebody had never, say, used a vault product like this before and they want to earn on their USDC, let's say, they're going to lend USDC into a vault. They go to Feather and look at a vault option, click into it. What are they going to see in that interface? Like, what information would be provided to them at that moment about this opportunity?
Yeah, I think we can show you. Share my screen.
Oh, nice.
So this is kind of the cool part about Feather is this is not a hypothetical. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So this is the earn page of Feather. The first thing you would do is connect your wallet. We're connected to over 500 different wallets, as I said earlier. There's also a bridging widget that, based off of the ecosystem and the network you select, will have the most appropriate bridge for users to use. But this is looking at Ethereum mainnet. So let's walk through the flow. We first are going to select a token, and you'll see there's basically a max rate that you can earn per asset. So we kind of show the upper bound of what's possible. We'll go ahead and select USDC. The next piece is you discover a vault. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where there's dozens of curators and dozens of different options to have different managed capital opportunities. So we'll kind of scroll through here. You can see there's lots of different yield, but you can also see which ones have more deposits or less deposits, which can kind of be seen as a proxy for trust, depending on how you view things. But let's say I want to go with Smokehouse, super well-known curator, super well-known brand. They got $170 million. There's 17 assets that I would have exposure to. And you can learn, we're still working on some like pop-ups and hovers, so you can learn about all 17 assets, but we'll go ahead and select this. Then that would take you to this page where you can see, oh wow, like $1.37 billion of deposits. Yeah, that's amazing. There's like over $1 billion trusted in this vault. You can see the APY, and probably most importantly, you can also see the allocations. So we can see down here that they're lending USDC to Syrup USDC as collateral pool, SRUSD as collateral pool. It looks like a bunch of fixed rate lending Pendle tokens, which is kind of an interesting collateral choice. So they're definitely taking some creative freedoms to achieve this yield. And so, you know what? Maybe I'm not comfortable with Smokehouse USDC. So I'm going to go ahead and change my vault. I'm going to go to Gauntlet USDC Prime. Lower yield, but I want to see if they have safer exposure. So I scroll down here. What are we being exposed to? More Pendle. Fascinating. Okay, I guess Pendle's a very popular asset on Ethereum mainnet. But regardless, you have your deposit and your withdraw, and you'd basically just be able to punch in your USDC and start earning there. Likewise with borrow, you see the 302 choices of collateral, 47 different borrow options. You can walk through this flow where let's go ahead and put ETH down as, actually not ETH. Some of this is looking at our Say deployment. So some of these options are, we have a mix between Ethereum mainnet and Say. So still beta version being cleaned up. Maybe we'll go with USDC as collateral. And basically, once again, you have all your different options for what you can borrow. And then once you select your collateral asset and your borrow asset, you would then have your available market pop up, and you'd click on that and it would go back to a very similar view. So that's the flow there. Still cleaning up some bugs, as is life with these things. We also have the Explore page, which gives you like the full universe of option and table view. But we found that table views can be very overwhelming for normal end users. And then you also have your portfolio page. I'll stop there. Hopefully that gives a little flavor, a little taste of the other app and where we're headed.
No, I'm glad you felt inspired to walk through that. That's a good way to do it. And all available on mobile too.
Yes, all available on mobile. Yeah. I have my phone. Actually, watch this. This will be kind of fun. I actually can show you.
Nice.
Directly on here. I won't be able to do the full demo, but you can proof of work, as we like to say. I actually think mobile looks better than desktop.
Yeah, and more, I think that's a desire for people. So
everything's going to be mirrored and flipped because of mobile, but you basically have this really nice slide out where you have like your earn experience, your borrow experience, your explore, same thing. It's super clean on mobile. I honestly think it's easier to navigate than the web experience.
And while you flashed the social icons, it made me think we need to point people to feather.zone. Social links are on there. You can read more about the protocol and information you're looking for. But you mentioned the Say deployment, which at the time of filming this, we're right at the threshold there. By the time people are watching this, it'll be out there and touchable live in the wild. Anything you want to say about Say as a partner, for really an ideal partner in a lot of ways for a first deployment for Feather? Pretty exciting. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, the Say ecosystem is fascinating. They have one of the fastest blockchains that I've ever seen. I believe it's in the hundreds of milliseconds for blocks, and they're continuing to go faster and faster. They're trying to basically be the EVM equivalent to Solana, and they're super obsessed with speed. They've brought on great partners. They just officially integrated Chainlink, which is super powerful for Feather because the universe of asset opportunities tied to Chainlink is huge. They have Redstone, which is another super well-known Oracle provider in API 3. So just really solid infrastructure there. MetaMask was also, like, native recommended support was just added. Native USDC also just came. So not like a Noble USDC, like an actual like Coinbase USDC issuance. So all of the DeFi rails are there to make incredible products. And we're just super excited to bring Morpho and the Feather interface and Feather vaults to Say, because there's a bunch of latent liquidity with Say as collateral, and actually a surprising amount of stable coins and interesting long tail assets that have been kind of waiting for this type of utility, and now Feather is going to be able to deliver that with such a simple interface. There's also a lot of RWA issuance stuff that's starting to be on the horizon. I'll also say that there's a really big say incentives budget. I'm not going to give the number here. I don't think that's appropriate at this point, but there is, I would say, a significant incentives budget that will also make bootstrapping the liquidity on the Feather deployment extremely exciting. And we are just looking forward to bringing in thousands of users to experience Feather for the very first time.
Yeah, that sounds like the invitation.
Yeah, I would say definitely join the Feather Telegram, follow us on X. We've been building pretty dang quietly for the last half year, but we do have an official partnership with the Morpho team. We hop on regular calls with them, and we have really, really great ambitions to bring Say as our starting intimate partner to very high heights. And yeah, just come check out the Say ecosystem. They have a bunch of different platforms. There's like a really strong DeFi ecosystem here, and the whales in the community have been super, super welcoming. Yeah, get off Ethereum mainnet, come experience some lightning speed, and hopefully some pretty awesome and safe yield as well.
Yeah, as I was synthesizing like everything that you've shared over the last hour, I sort of got this picture of fatigued crypto native liquidity that's just sort of the huddled masses that are coming with their battle wounds from whatever chain they've been on, where they've been. It's migrating. The wave is coming to something like Feather. And at the same time, all the dynamics that you described, people who like they kind of heard about, the scary meme coin casino, like, crypto, Bitcoin, haven't touched it yet. They too are going to be migrating into this on-chain economy because the whole world is. And it seems like both sides of that are all meeting in a place with isolated risk, omni-chain utility where you can borrow anything from anywhere, perform these simple financial functions on a platform like Feather. So, as we like to say, come fly.
Oh man, it feels good to say something like come fly. And I'll also say our vision, to close with two, we have very grand visions for. Our goal is to connect millions of people to the internet of lending. And to do that, you need to be able to lend anything from anywhere and borrow anything from anywhere. And we have really big visions for interop. Using our 4 years of experience previously in the Cosmos ecosystem, we have ambitious goals. So I didn't talk about them today because I think it's part of the medium and long-term roadmap. Our initial goal is to have really, really safe risk-adjusted return tied to Feather curation, and to make sure that we do a great job unifying Morpho and the Say ecosystem and just being a wonderful partner for onboarding dozens of assets and opportunities for all the customers over here. And so yeah, big ambitious visions, and this is a great first walkthrough. I know it was a long one. I know we wandered, but hopefully people listening in can get a feel for the excitement and also like the respect that we have for the fundamental attributes that make all of this stuff valuable.
Yeah, I think that came across loud and clear. So thanks for your story. Thanks for breaking down the big vision in understandable terms. Like, I think you've connected how it matters for everybody, for the everyday user. So appreciate you breaking it down. And thanks for your time.